I think premium though isn't always necessarily the price tag. I think it's the promise that you keep. And our promise again is that movement longevity. It's clinically backed. It's built to super serve women. We stay premium, I think, by being selective, not by being expensive, right? So we've got the right franchisees, the right markets, the right economics.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Franchise. As always, I'm your host, Paul Ehlinger. And today, joining us from Arizona, Jesse McBain. Jesse, thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Jesse, for those who may or may not know you, who the heck are you and how'd you get to where you are today?
It's great. Well, today I'm actually the COO of Pvolve. I've spent about 30 years in franchising with different brands, different categories. Started my career with Papa John's Pizza, helped scale that brand to what it is today. Spent several years with the Joint Chiropractic, and then a few other brands just in some different categories. So I came in to run the franchise side of Pvolve. When I got here, we were under 20 locations. We're opening our 40th next week. We've got about 90 licenses awarded, and probably another 10 to 12 opening later this year.
Not a bad gig.
Yeah.
I always love asking just like the differences, right? Obviously, Papa John's, multinational, large company. You joined Pvolve. What did you see in Pvolve that you were like, hey, this has the potential to get to that scale, from what you've experienced before?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a great question. I think, for me, it was really trying the method for the first time and really feeling the difference from that 50-minute workout. I think that was a big piece of it, but then also just seeing the Google reviews, seeing the NPS score, and just seeing the validation of the method. I think was the biggest piece for me was just really seeing like this is something that truly does show results and people are raving about it.
Yeah, I love that. Is it does the whole team do Pvolve? Is that like a job requirement to come in? Is you got to get in and get involved?
It certainly is. That's we and I think it's not that we have to. It's we love it. I mean, my boss and I, Julie Cartwright, she's the president. We were at a 6 a.m. class in New York City last week while we were at a conference, and so we were up and at them, and knocking out a quick workout before the conference started. So.
Not a shot to Papa John's, but you can feel a little bit better using this product than eating a Papa John's pizza every day. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Everybody loves pizza, but I think also being able to have strength and mobility and stability later in life is something you can feel pretty good about too.
Yeah, 100%. And I know, as we kind of progress through the episode, we're really going to dive into, how you maintain this brand experience as you're starting to grow this brand. You've kind of put the numbers out there where you're at, so growing quickly. But before jumping into that, for people who haven't done Pvolve yet, who haven't been in one of the cities where you guys are open, walk us through it, right? Because it is a different fitness experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, kind of, I guess our one-liner is really, it's we help, people get stronger and move better for life. It's functional fitness. We pair really functional movement with our patented resistance equipment. So we've got proprietary equipment that we use in all of our workouts. We call the whole thing really movement longevity. It's not about wrecking yourself in class. It's those three pillars: strength, mobility, stability. The three things that actually keep you moving well as you get older. And I think the piece that's most exciting for me is it's clinically backed. So there's science under it. It's not just a vibe, right? It's you can do it on demand, in a studio, with the equipment at home. It's the same science-backed method either way.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm curious, how much of that being clinically backed, proven, with that experience, I mean, that's such a differentiator, right? Like I think of any, fitness brand I see out there and how they're marketing themselves. Very few do that. A lot of them, I would argue, probably try to skirt, stuff like that. How much has that become a core part of the brand, and was that intentional to start off?
It really was. I think a lot of brands, you see the buzzwords that they'll add to taglines, and when you kind of ask the question behind the question or start peeling back the layers, you see it's really just it's almost a facade in a lot of ways. But it was really important for us to make that investment early and to get those clinical studies and really just prove that this isn't something that it's not just a tagline for us. It's not
Yeah.
just something that we say. It's proven. And I think, we're in a time right now where this is really front and center for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think longevity and strength and mobility and all of those things are something that a lot of people are super focused on. And I think for us to be able to deliver that with science behind it is something that's, really cool for us to kind of stand on, but also it provides kind of that confidence in the consumer to know that what they're doing is something that there's facts behind it.
Yeah, no, and I love that you called out the word longevity, because I think that is like a very large scale trend right now. Like obviously, like
Really,
Brian Johnson's kind of this figurehead of it, but I think the
yep.
topic itself is spreading across everywhere. And you guys were created probably right at the time that was starting to even gain some national attention. Like, is that a word you guys intentionally use as you're describing this product?
It is, and I think it's more than just kind of using the word. It's the behaviors, the actions, the tactics.
Understanding like what that actually equates to, like that
Exactly
experience.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It really is. It's defining what that means, I think, and
Yeah.
then again having the science behind it to help validate.
Yeah, and I love kind of bridging off of this. I think showing that clinically proven nature is one thing. Executing that at scale across many locations is another thing, right? Because I think the expectation of operational excellence has to be higher to maintain, like, hey, this needs to be repeated in a certain way because it is like validated by these clinical studies. How do you stress that importance of that? And like in your role, like I would assume you're kind of chiefly responsible for making sure that happens at scale.
Yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand with brand, really. And I think for us, the method is the brand.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
so
Wait, I love that. Yeah, it's good.
yeah, the class, the equipment, that movement longevity, that's the product. So step one for that is really we have to protect that method at all costs. And so we want to make sure it's the same class, the same equipment. It's the same in every studio, and we have to be diligent about that so that we can still stand on that that clinically proven method.
Yeah. Is it a chicken or the egg? Like, what came first, the products to support the exercises, or the exercises then needing products to support it? Like, what was the evolution?
Yeah, I think it was. That's fine. I think it was an evolution of both. Kind of they coincided together in a lot of ways. But I think the proprietary patented equipment I think evolved from one piece to two pieces to three pieces. As we started to understand what this could really be. But the movements and the exercises, I mean, they're tested, they're time tested, right? And so it's something that's been around for ages. We're just putting it into a package that drives those three things: that strength, mobility.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I've interviewed Sebastian Legree on this podcast before. So the guy who like invented Legree Pilates, right?
Yeah.
And I can feel similarities between the two brands in a way. I'm curious, like, how does that resonate to you? Just in the sense of like that man, I would consider him an inventor more than anything. Like he loves to tinker on product. I would argue you guys are way more about the experience, at least from what I've researched and found out about you. But do you feel those similarities? Is that something you think about or thought about before?
Not that I've really thought about it, but there certainly is, and we certainly share the same space in a lot of ways. So I kind of do see that comparison. I think for us, it's pairing the method with the experience as well, and I think that's what really the brand is. It's the method and the experience combined that creates community, that creates results for our clients, that creates a place where people want to be and want to be a part of. And so I think for us, it's not just the equipment. It's how does that play with the overall experience and doing it in a way that still protects the integrity of the method.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. And I'm curious, I was reading an article from you from the Franchise Times, and you kind of talked about this like 3-pillar focus in your first few months. I think you were like studio performance profitability, operational scalability, and then bringing digital and in-studio together all at once. I'm curious for you, what's been like the hardest of those to crack? Like I think all of these problems become bigger problems when you have more units, right? And so as you're growing, what are those pillars that, are the ones that are most difficult for you guys?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think consistency is kind of across all three of those.
Yeah,
One thing think nobody talks about is a lot of times consistency breaks online before it
sure.
ever breaks in the studio, right? You've got dozens of franchisees, and all of a sudden you've got dozens of Google business profiles and social accounts, and a customer can or a client can meet a messy version
Yeah,
of your brand in search before they ever kind of meet a trainer. So
100%.
kind of building that ecosystem alongside it is has been a huge unlock for us,
Hmm.
I think. And then just having those best practices in place are really helping us to accelerate, studio top line and profitability. But I think those three pillars. I think the toughest one there really it is that operational consistency,
Yeah,
and it's not because necessarily that we have a bunch of franchisees that want to go rogue. They all want to grow the business, and they all believe in the method and in the brand.
sure.
It's making sure that we have the tools, the resources, the playbooks, everything in place for them to go, and it's just kind of it's ready to go for them. And I think that's
Yeah.
been the piece for us is especially as as marketing evolves, as technology evolves, all those things evolve. Those playbooks are constantly changing,
Oh
and
yeah.
so you've got to have a system and a process to keep your systems and processes up to date too, right? And so
Yeah.
that's been the biggest, I would say, lift for us. But
Hmm.
we're in a really good spot now where we're starting to see a lot of the work that we started 2, 3, 4 months ago really start to pay off now, and
Yeah.
we're starting to see it in the results.
Yeah, I love that. No, I feel like, I'm a technology guy, and the
Hmm.
motto we always use is like, you're building the plane while you're flying it, right? And
Yeah,
I feel like the stage you guys are at as an emerging brand, like it's got to somewhat be true there too, right? Where it's just
yeah,
like, hey, we might not have a perfect system yet, but we've got a system, and that'll
exactly
iterate
right.
over time.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's I say this all the time. I say this to our franchisees. I think that not not every idea that a franchisee has is going to be a good one,
Yeah,
but in the same vein, some of the best ideas come from franchisees because they're the closest to the business in a lot of ways. And so
yeah.
you have to be open to listening and evolving and
Hmm.
adjusting and going in a different direction, because that's going to be what's going to get you to the next level is really kind of taking that collective wisdom of all of your franchisees,
Yeah.
and bringing that to the forefront. I think is something that some franchisors miss, and I think it's
Mm.
something that we're intentional about is hearing those good ideas and seeing how they could play out.
I love it because I think I kind of consider it like an iteration cycle. Like your iteration speed is how good
Absolutely.
you can be, right?
Yep.
And so like
Yep.
the faster you can iterate on a new idea, you can vet bad ideas faster. You can say, hey, actually, we love that you gave us the feedback. Here's what happened. It
Yeah.
didn't work. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's a good net positive in my opinion. And I think
Yeah.
the more
Absolutely.
of those you can do is amazing.
Yeah. Completely agree.
Um, I love that, and I'm curious. I think I'm intrigued by for you what the experience has been like between, and I'll just use Papa John's again for the example here,
Hmm.
but like, I think it's a little more straightforward to operationalize something like that, right? Where it's just like it's a little more process oriented, whereas with Pvolve it is so much more community based, right?
Yeah.
And building an ops playbook for community building, I think, is way more challenging because it needs like people need to be trained in certain ways, and they need to understand how to communicate and do all of this. What's been that experience for you as you've gone from other industries that may be less community focused than
Hmm.
one such as this where it is just such a big community focused play.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think what it really comes down to is selection. I think we've got to
Mm,
have the right type of person in that franchisee role,
yeah.
or that franchisee has to have the right type of person that really understands what that takes to kind of build community,
Yeah.
and what that looks like from a relationship standpoint. I think that's the
Hmm.
biggest piece, is going out and building those relationships and creating that community. It's something that you can really create from the ground up. And I
Yeah.
think it's not a silver bullet. We have playbooks on how to execute this kind of event or execute
Hmm.
this kind of
Hmm.
event. But at the end of the day, community is an ecosystem. I mean, it's
Right.
it's it's all of those components playing together, and so it's not just, hey, going out and having a
Yeah.
table, or going out and doing an activation, with Viore, or one of those other lifestyle brands. It's
Hmm.
really about what happens when that person then comes into the studio? Do they feel that
The
same
same
that
vibe.
same community, right? And so
Yep.
that's where it kind of goes back to the method, the experience, everything that's pulling everyone together. I think is a big piece of it, and then just really, having, and I think this is a part that does translate across brands, and it's the service component. What does the
Mm-hmm.
hospitality really look like?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, if we're doing that right, if we've got the hospitality piece, if we've got the method is exactly how it's supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
our studios are inviting, and the experience is positive, that's going to naturally, organically create the community that we're looking for.
Yeah, 100%. I'm curious, like what metrics do you tie to that, right? Because I'm assuming obviously Google reviews or one of those NPS
Yeah.
surveys, like what all goes into defining? Because like, and I mean this, like I'm an engineer myself. I'm a big data guy. To some
Mhm.
extent, I do believe community is vibes. Like you have to get the
Yeah.
right vibe when you show up somewhere, right? But then the other half of it is like actual number science that goes behind
Sure.
it. What are you
Sure.
considering when you're saying like, hey, this studio is effectively doing this
Yeah.
versus this studio that could maybe improve?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a little bit of, I would say, I don't want to say maybe, different kind of science. I think there's
Yeah.
probably some data science around this, but for me, there's four core KPIs that I
Mhm.
that I really kind of hone in on, that, in my opinion, are leading indicators of a successful studio, and it's first time traffic. So how many
Mhm.
first time clients are coming through the door?
Mhm.
Um, how many of them have such a positive experience that they wanted to then become either a package holder or a member, right?
Yep.
Uh, and then as members, how, how, are they seeing the results? Are they enjoying the product so much that they don't leave us? So attrition,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
What's our attrition look like? And then utilization. How full are our classes? And I think those are the four, in my opinion, that are, if a studio is nailing first time clients, conversion, attrition, and
Yeah.
utilization, um, they've got a really good shot at success. And really, it's a couple steps even below that. It's the behaviors, the actions, and the tactics that really drive those KPIs
Yep.
that we take a look at, and that we help coach and train and kind of close the gap on.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Do you look at member referral at all? Because when I think
We
about,
do.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's got to be a key metric in there too.
absolutely. That's a huge one for us, and that's one of the behaviors, actions, and tactics that drive
Hmm.
first time clients. So that's a
Yeah.
subset essentially of first time clients, is what's our referral look like, and
Yeah.
that's a behavior that we're looking to drive first time clients into our studio.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I'm curious, I'm what I'm fascinated by in your business, you guys have like a lot of business models happening at once. You've got the studio, you've got digital memberships, you've got
Yeah.
physical products and e-com store you're selling. You've got a lot
Hmm.
of entry points for somebody, which I
We
think is a
do.
really big positive. I would guess for you, what you're trying to figure out is like, okay, great. Somebody buys this piece of equipment. How do I get them through here and vice versa?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like for you? Because I
That,
imagine that's it's like a happy nightmare, right? In the sense of like if you can solve it, it's massive upside, but it's still a problem to solve.
it's been a lot of fun. I can tell you
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's like a toy I've never had. Like it's
you,
such the
you've got
you know
so many ways in, you know.
you really do. And then it's how do you tether them, right? And then how do
Hmm.
you? It's a different. It's a little more complex customer journey, I think,
I
for us.
have to imagine, yeah,
And ultimately what we're trying to do is get the consumer to the place that they feel most comfortable
hmm
executing our method. And
yeah,
but to your point, there's a couple different ways of entry,
hmm
and what's really cool for us, and this is something that we've really been leaning into the last couple of months, is it's such a benefit to our franchise system to have kind of that e-commerce side of the business.
oh, I can
Uh,
imagine.
not only we do a profit share on any product that's sold, but we also are now really figuring out how to leverage our CRM to, hey, someone buys a product online, what's the
Oh,
closest
are they
studio
going to
to
get a
them?
cut of that from your studio?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
But then also, how do we get that consumer to go in and test out the equipment in a
Hell
studio,
yeah,
or how do
yeah,
we get them to go try a class live? If they've only done streaming or only done
yeah,
on demand, how can we also get them into a studio? And so those are some things that we've been super focused on the last couple of
yeah,
months, is figuring out how we can use e-commerce to funnel first
yeah.
time clients into our franchise studios.
Yeah, that's, I mean, because you could just go so many ways with it, right? Like I'm
Right.
imagining like all the online people, get them to an in-person class. Anybody on the
Yep.
equipment, get them to
Yeah.
an digital class. Like,
Yeah, well,
yeah, that's
that's one of the
fascinating.
perks of our studio membership too. Is you also get access to our live streaming and on demand product
Yeah.
as well. So yeah,
Do you see any like cannibalism with that, where it's like, do you feel like, oh, maybe if they didn't have the online offering, they would show up to a franchise location, or is it fully separate in you guys' mind?
yeah, I think and we hear this a lot too. It was interesting. We had a candidate that came in, and it was a couple, and one of the couples said, "Hey, I need to be in a studio
Mm.
to work out," and the other couple was like, "I just want to do mine in my own."
I don't want to
So
be
I'm like,
seen anywhere. Yeah.
yeah, exactly right. But then there is that blended consumer too that likes to do both. And what we
Yeah,
found is
it's interesting.
that consumer is the consumer that stays with us the longest, the one that
I mean, makes
leverages
sense. They're so
both.
engaged
Yeah,
everywhere.
exactly right. Yeah, to travel, and especially we still have a relatively small footprint,
Yeah,
with
100%.
our
Yeah.
brick and mortar, right? And so that part of the business is so I would say no, we haven't seen necessarily cannibalization from it, and I think the
Yeah.
more we start to have data come through and know how to know how to talk to that client and make sure that they're in the space that they want to be
Hmm.
in. We're going to be able to do even more things to kind of increase that that LTV
Yeah.
as well as uh, help with attrition and conversion and all of those things.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it. It was like a weird bastardized version of like the food truck versus location,
Yeah,
problem. But it's very different, obviously. But I
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
it's
No,
it's
absolutely
com-
right. That's it is. In some ways, it's similar. I think early days of Papa John's, that was what we would do. We would take a food truck and go to a
yeah,
market and see how it performed.
yeah,
And if it did well, then we need to put a store here, and
yeah.
that's kind of what we're able to do here too. Is
I mean, yeah, you have the digidigital
yeah,
footprint. Like, I'm
yeah,
sure you can track an IP address or a credit card location,
exactly
and
right. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's super cool. With that, I'm like, I how do you balance that? I guess, right? Because you guys obviously have to have a small team. You're
Mhm.
scaling with it. Do you ever feel like priorities get not influenced properly, or like, oh man, we're giving too much time to ecom right now? Like,
Mhm.
how do you manage all that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think for at a time early on that may have been the case, but
Yeah,
right now the e-commerce business is really a tool for us to be able to accelerate our growth, and
yeah,
I think that's what we're really leaning into
hmm,
is how do we leverage e-com.
yeah,
And I think from the top down, it's really our focus right now is really how do we leverage that to accelerate our studio growth and
yeah,
our brick and mortar growth. And I think that's a strategic initiative of ours that we're focused on every day, every week, every
yeah,
quarter. So it's how do you balance it? I think you have to be intentional, and I
hmm,
think it has to have a voice. The studio has to have have a voice in every decision that we make.
hmm,
And that's something that the executive leadership team has been committed to.
yeah,
And I think that's how we do it.
yeah. Do you guys leverage the digital memberships for any like experimentation, or like trying a new thing in a class or something like that? Like, I'm just thinking places you can scale faster, iterate faster than if you had to
Yeah,
like roll it out, and operationalize it physically.
I think maybe how we are able to leverage some of that data. I don't know that
Mm,
it's necessarily we're guinea pigging things on digital.
mm.
We probably do that maybe even more in the studio
Oh,
than in
interesting.
digital. But what it can do for us is really help us understand um, class selection,
Yeah.
class size. There's just different. There's just a lot more data points over there because
Hmm.
it's been around longer, and so I think that's kind of how we leverage that. Is
Yeah.
what modality, like those types of things, is how we're able to leverage that data a little bit more.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I'm curious, I think fitness, especially as of the last decade or so, has really been undergoing kind of this bifurcation. You've got premium brands, and you've got like
Mm-hmm.
the, hey, give me your credit card and I'll never see you, but I'm going to keep charging you $12 a month or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you guys have obviously chosen the intentional path towards the premium side here. How do you spill that through with, franchisee owners who maybe they want to discount a product, or they want to do this, and it's like, hey, we're maintaining this status or this brand identity,
Yeah,
as we want to stay premium as we scale.
yeah, that's a good one. I think for us, it is a tension. I think premium though isn't always necessarily the price tag. I think it's the promise that you keep. And
Yeah.
our promise again is that movement longevity. It's clinically backed. It's built to super serve women. We stay premium, I think, by being selective, not
I
by
like
being
that.
not by being expensive, right? So we've got the right franchisees, the right
Exclusivity.
markets, the right economics. Like I said, we're opening our 40th next week. But growth, I don't think it doesn't mean yes to everybody, not at any cost, and not with just any operator. And I think the minute you will take anybody with a checkbook, that's the minute that the kind of the premium dies. But like discounting, right? I think that's a lot of people think that's kind of the enemy of premium, of a premium brand, right? And I think I get why people think that, but I don't see necessarily like an intro offer as a discount. I think it's a trial of the method. It's we're not cutting the price of the brand. We're getting someone to feel movement longevity
to experience the experience.
Exactly right. Because once they feel it, they get it, and it kind of sells itself in the body. And so the offer isn't we're cheaper. It's really come feel this. And I think that's a different thing entirely.
Yeah, and I'm curious, I was looking at your Facebook ad library. I'm always intrigued by what ads brands are running, and I would say you guys are definitely oriented towards, let's call it 30 to 50-year-old women, right? Like I see an ad with Jennifer Aniston. There's one talking about menopause. You're obviously not that. How do you build a brand? How do you put yourself into those shoes? And saying, like, we want to keep this brand promise to our ideal customer profile. How do you drive that experience for yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I do think it's we are built to super serve women, and our I think most utilized client is that woman that's 40 to 55. But I think at the same time, we are inclusive, and we are neutral. And I think when we think about the three pillars that I've talked about, in that strength, that mobility, and stability, I think that speaks to everyone. And I think it is a space that people do want to have that strength. They do want to be able to move. They do want to be able to unlock their hips. They do want to be able to stand on one foot. They want to be able to walk downstairs.
Hear me out. I probably need to do that today. I've been sitting at this desk for 9 hours.
I didn't know I needed it until I started getting it. Right? I'm like, oh wow, I'm finding myself, slipping on ice and not falling. I'm like, oh, that's because I'm doing Pvolve. So, I do think it's important to stay true to our core, but at the same time, I do think that our brand promise does apply to more than just folks within that kind of small window.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. And maybe a last question as we kind of phase out here, but I'm more of an existential question. I think the world with GLP-1s is seeing a path to like increased health outcomes with less effort, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of people are going to take advantage of that, right? Sure. And they're going to want to, but I do think they're missing the point, right? Of like maintaining strength, growing real healthiness. How do you guys live in that world over the next decade? Because I'd imagine that usage goes up, right? I mean, the amount of money being spent into that. How do you guys play in that world, and how do you continue to like maintain this notion that like, hey, real health takes work, it takes time?
Yeah, I think to your point that is happening at a just accelerated path right
very
now,
quick,
right? At the same time, I think education is a huge piece, and I do think our method, and especially being science backed, I think it pairs very nicely with that cohort of folks that are on the GLP-1s, because the one thing that they say is so important, if you're on a GLP-1 is maintaining your muscle mass.
Yeah, muscle density. Yep.
Right. And so, strength being one of our core pillars, it really does it. And we've got on our medical board is folks that they're educating around this, right? Because we see it, we understand that it's certainly not going anywhere, and so it's really how can we help? How can we help them feel better? And build that strength and build that muscle and all the things that kind of amplify the impact, the positive impact of a GLP-1.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. And, as we close out, Jesse, where can folks find out about you online, reach out to you, learn more about Pvolve, your chance to kind of sit on the podium and tell people what they want to know?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah. Pvolve.com. Obviously for Pvolve, if you're interested in franchising, if you're interested in becoming a client and checking out a class, I would strongly suggest trying to find a studio close to you and getting in and feeling that experience. And if there's not one around you, then we've got the on-demand and live streaming classes as well. Me personally, LinkedIn is the best spot to find me. That's probably like the only social media that I have. So
Sure.
I check that every once in a while, but yeah, that's the best place to find me. And yeah, pvolve.com for to check out the method.
I love it. Well, Jesse, thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. I think really love just diving into, maintaining a premium brand experience as you scale, like super useful information there. And just diving into like where you think this is all going. So thank you for taking the time today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I love what you're doing with this podcast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And for everybody listening, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast as much as I did. And this has been another episode of Behind the Franchise. We'll talk to you on the next one. See ya.